of great interest to everybody. And certainly at times of elections and with a lot of political decisions to make over the next few months based on facts and evidences and not speculations and other ideas. So really it's a particular pleasure also in
Alliance for Clean Energy Action Fund, and I've been working on climate and energy issues for about 17 years now with people like Dr. John Van Leer, who's sitting there in the second row, and a lot of other fantastic people like Harold Longworth.
Where do I start? Mr. Podesta talked about how to think about reducing fossil fuels, but local communities like here in South Florida have to respond today and adapt to the climate change.
All the advancements that were being made, there was a great deal of interdependency that we had given our shared water resources, watershed, coastal resources, infrastructure, our community.
Lack of water resource, the wildfire threat in the west, etc.
And Doug Howard is going to talk about the Solar Energy Loan Fund.
Which President Clinton started in 1994. And I also want to introduce traditional financing options. So our standards are less stringent for the bank. So
water hedge strong. We've got 6 million people in this metropolitan area, but
our community do very well at, as an environmental minded group, is to sell the economic. When we're able to finance projects, we're able to put contractors back to work. And so we have 165 contractors in our network, and what they're $1.1 million worth of work through us so far. And that's just a small
Plan will really help shift us to a green economy.
Well, need upgrading in the United States. There's a tremendous lack of.
For a single municipality, we could be looking at costs of and major infrastructure like our intercoastal waterways. Those are the types of.
I'm a high schooler here in Florida, and I'm also the founder of the Sink or Swim project, as well as MiamiSeaRise.com. So I would like to ask you a question about solar power, but before I do, I would like to give you the added perspective that I have grown up and lived part-time in a solar-powered home in the Florida Keys on an island called No Name Key. Estimates suggest that 50% of all of Florida's power needs could come from the sun by 2045 if we were to start taking that.
A big struggle. Finally reauthorize the tax credit that's trying to get these other countries in line and online.
We have less than 0.1%
bound up with our access to the oceans, and those oceans are under tremendous stress. So another aspect of why we really need to continue the policy, I think the answer to that is yes. It's been able to
Miami Beach. My question's a political one in nature. My opponent fancies herself a moderate. Of course, she votes with her party 90%.
From rising sea levels to rising heat, Miami is ground zero for this issue. Discussions have been held all over the city in order to determine what we can do to fix it.
Well, it's important because it affects everybody. And the fact that I live in a very vulnerable community, low income, very low education, I noticed that my community is not always included in the plans. And I took the initiative to try to bring resiliency to my community directly and communities that's built just like it.
So since you decided to get involved, what kind of things have you accomplished?
Well, one, we do a lot of educational things to start off with, because a lot of people don't understand why the sun is getting hotter. They don't understand why the seas are rising. So we do take our time and we do educational forums as often as maybe like every 3 weeks. We do monthly discussions on things that we can do, becoming self-resilience within ourselves. So things like minimizing carbon footprints and things that you can do in your everyday lives that won't cost you any money. And then also we come together to discuss things that we can go advocate with our local government when it comes to resources that we can start to see change in our communities.
So there's so much ignorance about this subject. Like people know about it, but people are just in denial about it. What would you tell those people looking forward to the future?
Well, it is very real. Climate change, sea level rise, the heat, everything is very, very, very real. I want people to understand that you can feel this. Even if the water is not at your front door, you can be affected by these things. We are starting to see a lot of different things in our community, from gentrification being tied to sea level rise and climate change to children passing out and dying from heat strokes in our community. So it's very real. I want everybody to understand that all of us can suffer from this. Flint, Michigan is not the only place that can have a water crisis. And Miami is not the only place that suffers from sea level rise. I want everybody in the whole entire country, in the world, to know that climate change is very real, and we have to work very hard to prepare ourselves and also work on preventative steps so that it won't get worse.
So I've grown up in part in the Florida Keys, where our family has a solar-powered home. And it's on a 1,000-acre island in the middle of nature reserves, and so there's wildlife everywhere. It's a magical place. And so ever since I was little, I've been in love with nature and the ocean and the environment in general. And so because of that, when I was in elementary and middle school, I wrote 3 children's books on ecology topics about those animals there in the Keys. And as I learned about those animals, I gradually learned about climate change and how it was affecting those animals. And that worried me because this was happening in my lifetime, and it seems like our leaders weren't doing anything about it. So I decided to write a 4th book about climate change. And in 10th grade, I took a class at Palmer Trinity School called the Academy of Agents of Change that taught us leadership skills through international and domestic travel. And I took my book project and integrated it with the class because it required us to create a sustainable initiative. So from that, I created what I call the Sink or Swim project, and along with it, a website called MiamiSeaRise.com. And within the project, I go out to the community and I give lectures to people of all ages with a specific focus on children, because we're going to inherit this problem. This is our mess to fix now, because adults in leadership positions have chosen not to focus on it.
Okay, so there's so much ignorance about this subject. People who know about it and just are denying it, or people who are just denying it altogether. So what would you tell those people moving forward how important it is that we pay attention to this issue?
It is so important. I would tell them that first and foremost, we need to put solar power everywhere, because solar power is the beginning of sustainable energy. It's basically free once it's installed, and it's very easy to use. And you can even partake in net solar metering, which gives you money if you sell extra power back to the company, and who doesn't like to gain money? So that's a bonus. I'd also say that we need to get rid of carbon dioxide and all fossil fuels at all costs, because that is what's causing this problem mainly. As we use fossil fuel powered cars, and as factories pump out carbon dioxide and other gases into our atmosphere, it is creating a warmer earth and warmer oceans, which is causing the ice to melt, and it is causing sea level rise. So it's all connected, and it really comes back to using sustainable energy and getting rid of fossil fuels in our environment, whether it be making a law about it or putting a price on carbon.
And can you just expand on what you've done personally for this issue again? Like, just go on for however long you want to.
Okay.
I just want to truly know what you've done.
Okay, so I have just finished drafting my 4th book, and this one is on climate change, and I hope to have it done by the end of this year and have it published. I have given a TEDx talk at the Adrian Arch Center here in Miami, and that was about climate change as well. And it was about what I'm doing as well as how kids get it. Kids understand that this is a huge issue. They get that smoke pouring out of a factory and a power plant and a car is unhealthy for our environment. And they really want to talk about what we can do to stop doing that. They want to talk about solutions. And I've also engaged politicians about this issue. Last year, I attended the Miami-Dade County budget hearing and spoke in front of the mayor and the commission, because the mayor of Miami-Dade County did not allocate any money initially towards mitigating sea level rise in his budget, which is completely immoral because we're already facing risks from sea level rise. And so I asked him to allocate $1 million. And of course, he laughed at me for that. But in the long run, he did allocate $300,000 after pressure from the public, and he also appointed Miami-Dade County's very first chief resiliency officer. So those are positive steps. However, now he needs to start using the money instead of using it to pay for the chief of resilience officer's job and for consultants that no one knows what they're actually used for. So now we need to start putting the money into actual solutions instead of just ideas. What else have I done? Let me think.
Want to go to the next one?
Sure.
And last but not least, in Miami specifically, what do you think needs to be the very first step in order to tackle like rising sea levels, the heat index, all that? what's the very first thing we as a community need to do together?
The very first thing that we as a community here in Miami need to do to conquer sea level rise and climate change would be to get our politicians on board. Right now they're putting special interests and profits ahead of solving this problem, and that is the biggest issue. They are not paying attention, they are completely denying it, and we're not going to get anywhere if we don't take this seriously. We need our politicians to realize that this is a problem on a state level, because there are some county mayors that are doing things, but there are others that are not doing anything at all. And that is a huge problem, because we're already seeing the risks of sea level rise in Miami Beach with the flooding. And we cannot let this happen, because it's already happening. And if it keeps happening, then in 2045, seas are going to rise 2 or 3 feet at least because of the damage that we've already done. And that's in my lifetime, that's in my generation's lifetime, and by 2060, seas could rise even higher if we continue on this trend. It could rise 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 feet. It could be a drastic change if we keep going on this path. And so we absolutely need to get our political leaders on board and support climate change, justice, and legislation.